You know, as business people, the question is often asked, how did I learn to have success? And one of the ways you learn to have success is learn about other people's failures. We're speaking today with Cassandra Phillips of FailCon. Welcome.
Thank you.
So tell me, what is FailCon and why should people learn what not to do?
So FailCon is a one-day conference, full day, usually about 2 to 3 tracks, and it discusses where we can go wrong in business development, the common mistakes that a lot of founders have made, developers and investors as well, what they learned from those mistakes, and how they try to avoid them now. It's pretty important to learn from failure, I think. It's one of those things that I usually ask a room when I'm talking about the show, how many of you have failed? And I know the people that don't raise their hands are lying, or just blind and refusing to accept it.
Right.
So we need to learn from our failures in order to find success. I think if you've just had success, it's a lot of luck, and it's really hard to repeat that. But with failure, you can have it once, know what went wrong, and be able to recover from it pretty quickly.
Now, when this idea came to you, said about a year and a half ago, what was the response when you went to people and said, I'm going to do a conference on failure?
Yeah, it started pretty tame. I wasn't actually sure I wanted to do it yet. I didn't know if I wanted to brand myself with failure, which is now what has happened. People seem to think I know failure well. But it started off with me saying, well, what do you think about kind of a half-day show, a little chat about it? Everyone told me it was completely necessary in the industry. It was a big issue that was lacking at conferences today. So I was pretty surprised. As it developed, however, I started to realize a lot of people also hated the idea, which actually made me pretty happy to have that emotional response, to both have people who absolutely loved it and wanted to back it with me, and people who completely couldn't stand it.
Who are the people that had the emotional response, bad idea, I'm not going to support this? Did they tend to fall into a certain category of business?
I didn't know many of them well. I put them in a category in my head of people who were afraid and probably shouldn't be entrepreneurs. I think if you're afraid of failure and unwilling to accept that it's going to happen to you, you should stay at your desk job, where it's not your responsibility if something really goes wrong. Someone's there to take the blame. You're going to be okay. So they seem to be people who I assume didn't have a lot of drive, were a little blind to these things, and just kind of wanted their life to go in that nice step ladder that we all can plan our lives to go in. And they weren't quite ready to take that step to be entrepreneurs. So I knew that they weren't really my audience anyways.
Nowadays, with social media and 24/7 attention on just about everything, I mean, I always tell people there is no privacy anymore. It'd be fascinating to think there is, but in a sense there isn't. Do you think we're all entrepreneurs in a way?
That's actually a really interesting question. I do think that we all have a little more control now of where our lives can go. I think anyone at this point can become an entrepreneur. I think there's very little stopping someone from saying, I don't like the job I have right now. I'm going to start my own business. I think that fear and possibly ignorance are the two things that would keep you from doing that. And with social media, as you said, there's a lot of ways to fix the ignorance, to read a blog on, like I started a company at one point a while back and we were looking for investment and I had no idea how to raise investment. So I read blogs and they're free, they're open to the public, and I learned what term sheets were and what the deck should look like and what kind of questions they were going to ask. All free and available on the internet if you want to learn it. There are obviously other things that can stop someone from becoming an entrepreneur.
And how did that first business go for you?
Oh, it failed.
So how long did it take before it failed, and why did it fail? What's your case study for FailCon?
So my personal case study is we did a social media, we being a business partner of mine, Christian Perry, and a developer, Raf, that we brought on board. We put together a website that would, and here was our biggest problem, I don't really know what it did. It aggregated conversations across the web based on common themes and topics. Kind of, sort of, maybe.
Yeah.
We worked on that for about 6 months. Officially, we had the idea in, I'd say, about September of '08. We worked on it through June of '09, pretty aggressively those 6 months. We put about $70,000 in it that we had earned through through other ventures. Now, some of the $70K did go to paying our bills.
That wasn't someone who said, "Hi, Cassandra, here's $70,000."
No, it was money.
Your money.
It was our money. Now, mind you, some of that did go to paying our basic bills.
Sure.
We didn't make a lot, but we'd pay ourselves maybe $1 to $2K a month just to cover basic expenses. About 6 months in, our basic problems, we realized that things weren't going well. We had about 100 users, no investment money. All the investors said pretty much the same thing. We don't get it. We don't understand what it does. We don't understand what problem it solves. we made the mistakes that we were told we would make, and we were determined that we weren't. And I think almost every startup has to make once. The common ones being, you assume there's a problem before you know there's one. We assumed everyone else thought this was an issue. And even when they told us we don't think it's an issue, we just wouldn't listen. We assumed we're talking to the wrong people. We also just couldn't iterate fast enough. We couldn't get our turnaround quickly enough. And we were really afraid, this is the biggest one, to launch a product that wasn't perfect.
Do you think that has, it's so funny you say that. I went to a conference not long ago and someone was speaking on social media, and that the biggest fear for businesses to get through is the fear of transparency and the fear of making a mistake. Because if I have a website, I'm going to make sure it looks perfect, or I'm going to print a brochure, or we're going to hopefully not have a typo on it, or whatever it is. But the very nature of the age in which we live now means that people are putting stuff out before it's ready all the time.
And your customers are really okay with that. A lot of customers actually love to see it. If you're open about it, again, if you're honest in saying this isn't a finished product, there are problems, here are the problems we're aware of, please report others. I know Mozilla just put up with Firefox, just put up a bug wall, asking all of their users and saying, we just launched a new Firefox and there are a ton of bugs. Please find them, show us where they are, and if you have a suggestion on how to fix them, please let us know.
So how do you find the old, quote-unquote, old-fashioned entrepreneur, maybe a person who came into business in the 70s or 80s, so now they're in their 40s, maybe 50s, and they're suddenly dealing with this great new world in which everything they learned is completely turned on its head. Is there still time for those people to learn and change?
I think there is. A big thing that I think every company needs is actually one of those people. I think that one of the best startup dynamics is 1 to 2 young founders, people who don't have much to lose, people like myself where I could go back to my parents if I needed to, I could go get a normal job. But that age group stereotypically also can be too big of risk takers, can just assume they're correct, can be a little headstrong. And I think there's a great place in that team for the 40 or 50 or 60 or more experienced entrepreneur to come in and say, I've made those mistakes, just trust me, don't go down that path. This is what I did, this is what worked and what didn't. And we're changing, and to have that team learn from each other, I think is the fastest way to have someone like that who's interested in getting back into the industry, for them to get their foot in, is to advise those young companies so they can pick up those techniques pretty quickly.
I think it was about a year ago I saw a figure that said, 70,000 new videos go onto YouTube every day. I'm sure it's more now. And I also saw that it was, I think it was in The Economist, a study that said the average U.S. consumer is presented with 7,000 brands a day.
Wow.
What is it now? I mean, are things moving so fast? How do you take that good idea of aggregating content and doing that great thing and make money doing it?
If I had the answer to that, I'd have $1 billion.
Yeah.
A big thing that I wish more companies realized is being one of those 7,000 brands doesn't matter anymore. A comment on one of your earlier points is that those mistakes and that openness really let you bond with your clients and your customers. When you make a mistake and are able to recover from it well, I think Dell has done that recently, Comcast has done that recently. To have the mistake and say, we made that, we're sorry, how can we fix it? And your clients suddenly build a loyalty to you. And I think it is that loyalty that more brands need to learn about, that flashing a sign in front of my eyes over and over and over doesn't build loyalty. But reaching out to me on Twitter and saying, hey, I'm sorry you had a bad experience, we want to try to fix it, suddenly I am more inclined to become a regular user. That's not going to make you millions right away, but to have that core base of 100 really loyal customers is much more valuable than having 1,000 who might stop by when they think of it.
Right.
I think that's the stepping stone that social media lets us do, is it lets a new business maybe not make the million, but at least form a really intimate relationship with those early users who can share with them and grow with them as they develop and help them spread the word virally.
Right. Now, of course, in the same way, if we knew what the next big thing was, we'd both be making gazillions. Right. We've seen a lot. I mean, 5 years ago, there was no Facebook. It still amazes me. Every now and then I'll be having a conversation with someone and they'll say, oh, how did you meet so-and-so? And I'll start to say, oh, I friended them on Facebook, but then I realize that can't be possible because Facebook wasn't here. I've even had experience with when I started a business, there was no email. I thought that was like,
I wouldn't know what to do.
What was a great thing. What is the next thing you're seeing that is going to be not the new Facebook, but something that's maybe a game changer? And what are the things we're dealing with now that you think are just going to kind of be the fax machine of the 2012, 13.
Sure. I don't know if I have a specific company that people should keep an eye on, but I would definitely say we need to watch mobile. I think that there's a lot more we can do with, and I tell this to most of the companies I advise, there's a lot more we can do with mobile, especially when you pair that with the second industry I think is big with geolocation. To be able for me to walk by a Starbucks and have my phone buzz and say, hey, you're by a Starbucks. Do you want a free coffee? Go get a free coffee. And they'll toss in a bagel for $1 and go, oh, well, there is a Starbucks right there. Bam, I'm there. Or to do it on the social angle and say, hey, do you know your friend Julian is sitting in the coffee shop next door? You noted that you wanted to have a meeting with him. Do you want to catch him now?
So what you're
brilliant.
Yeah. So the word that pops to mind for me is serendipity. Are we finding a way to plan serendipity?
I think we are. I think a big thing that working with my conferences, I'm working with a company that I want to build a tool that tells you when someone of importance to you walks in the conference. And everyone opts in. This is that issue of privacy. Everyone can opt in or opt out of this service, but it'll tell you want to meet an investor interested in clean tech. Well, an investor interested in clean tech just walked in. Here's their Twitter handle. Do you want to go meet them? And you can kind of plan that serendipity, which is a great word.
Now, in the same way that technology, I mean, I've said this before, that the only reason I have a job is because my grandmother gave me typing lessons when I was 15. And it wasn't a computer, it was a typewriter. But we still use, I mean, my job, no matter how technology has advanced the speed in which I do that job, I'm still basically communicating, putting words out, whether it's on your iPhone or on a computer or even printed on a good old-fashioned piece of paper. We're still communicating in words, and those words, I believe, are still about building real-time relationships.
Yes.
As someone once said, it was the blogger conference, Elisa Kammerhort, said it's about finding the people behind the pixels.
Right.
Do you think that still is important, finding the people behind the pixels, or is it all just about the pixels?
I think it's incredibly important. I actually think an issue that a lot of event producers have, especially new event producers, they see someone like myself, Brian Zisk, Web 2.0 conference, O'Reilly, and they go, oh, they have a huge social media presence. That must be why they're successful. And it's really the other way around. We go out in the community a lot. I do 2 to 3 events a night or 2 to 3 events a week that I will go to and meet the people there and talk with them and see what they wanted to show. And that gives me a big social media presence, that I've met that person, that I've said, here's how you can follow me on Twitter. Here's how you can email me. Here's how you can reach out in that pixel world. That's what builds my presence online. A lot of people they build themselves a Facebook page, they set up a Twitter account.
And they think they're done.
And they think the magic's going to happen and they'll have 1 million followers.
So how many emails, Facebook postings, and tweets do you send on an average day? And what's an average day?
I actually got a little nervous. I recently learned that Gmail will block your account if you send more than 500 emails.
Yes, they will.
Yeah,
Happened.
I didn't know that. I'm a little concerned about that.
It was like Big Brother. I was like, where's the camera? They just saw that I sent 500 emails.
So I haven't been shut down, so I'm not at 500 emails a day. I bet I'm at about 150 to 200, depending on the day. I don't tweet that often. I don't like to spam my Twitter streams.
Yes.
It's probably about 3 tweets a day. I actually don't use Facebook messages. I know they tried to replace email. I don't buy it.
All right, I'm glad to hear that, because I thought I was the only one that's like, I still like email. I think it's, what is it, Steve Jobs called it, a killer app?
Yeah. Email is going to be around for a while. I think we're stuck on that one. I do a few Facebook statuses. I'm not super active on Facebook. I mostly put my events there. Email is my primary communication. Once every 2 weeks, I also send out an email mailing list to about 5,000 people.
Great. In our last few moments, tell us your website so we can learn more about FailCon.
It is failcon2010.com, and you can see all of my events at webwallflower.com.
Great. We've been speaking with Cassandra Phillips about how to learn from failure, and now we're going to speak with the owner of a very successful restaurant, the owners of Tangerine. We'll be right back.